Blog Talk Radio.
Archangels, ghosts, and Bigfoot, oh my. It's just another night for Supernatural Girls. Real stories, real answers to life's biggest supernatural mysteries. And now for another exciting interview with paranormal experts from this world and others. Here are your supernatural hosts, Patricia Baker and Becky Andreasen. Supernatural Girls.
Welcome, everyone, to another exciting episode of Supernatural Girls Radio. I am your host, Patricia Baker, and I am here with my co-host, famous numerologist, Patricia Kirkman. Hi, Patricia. How are you this evening?
Oh, I'm just hunky-dory fine.
Oh, wow. Guess it doesn't get much better than that. Hunky-dory. Haven't heard that in a million years.
I know it. I just figured since we're going back and looking at things from the past and how things started, we'd do it ourselves, too.
I like that. That's wonderful. You bring things full circle for us. Yeah, we've got quite a show tonight. We're going to be talking about ancient history, but the important part is why ancient history applies to our lives today and how we can use it for our own enlightenment. And you know, I've looked for a million years, I swear to God, at all of the symbols and the pyramids and the headdresses and ancient Egypt, ancient Maya culture. And I could never figure it out. It's like, what in the world are they trying to tell us? Or are they trying to just keep a secret and keep it all to themselves? So we're going to find out, because our guest tonight is Carlton Brown. He is the author of Sacred Secrets of the Sun Gods. And we're going to find out if we can use what he has uncovered to transform our lives, which I'm always in favor of transformation. I'm always looking for the upgrade, you know?
I know that there's something better out there from what we've seen in the past, and so going forward, I want it to be equally as – no, I want it better.
I know. I want it better, and I think it's inside of us, but that's what Carlton's going to tell us is how to get to it and how to unleash this inner power. So I can't wait to hear from him. But first, I got to share with you, we are so excited as Supernatural Girls. Every once in a while, we get these other opportunities. And Renee Barnett, who is the producer and the host of Night Vision Radio, called me the other day. She's out in L.A. She's got a great show out there. And she invited Becky and I to come on her show tomorrow night at 10:30 and talk about the work we're doing with Beyond the Skull Experiment. So we agreed to do it. We're going to have to take a nap, I think, during the afternoon so we can stay up for this one, Patricia.
You'll make it. You're good. You can handle it.
Oh, gosh. Then we have so much exciting things to share about what we're doing. Some of the photographs that we have to report, we've sent them around before on Twitter and some on Facebook, but we are going to be posting them on the website. And so also, for people that want to listen, go to the website. There's a link there, and it'll bring you to Renee's show. And, again, the name of it is Night Vision, 10:30 tomorrow night, a late night for Supernatural Girls. And it's going to be fun. And then we'll have all our pictures from Skull posted there. And you're going to see what we've been up to. It's pretty wild stuff. You've seen some of the photos, Patricia, so you know what.
Oh, yeah. That's enough to make a little chill here and there and a little oh.
That's true. And you just had an event over in Tucson. You do these once a month. You had another psychic fair.
Yes, we did on Sunday. It was really interesting. The hotel, which is the DoubleTree on Alvernon Way, was booked to capacity, and they still made sure that we were well taken care of there, and it went off beautifully.
That's terrific. Now, you do this, is the first Sunday of every month is when you do the psychic fair. So everybody, when you're in the Tucson area, and if you happen to be there the first Sunday of the month, Go to the psychic fair. I know, Patricia, you've got some really top-notch readers that
they're
show
fabulous.
up every month.
We're very
So-
fortunate, and I do call them the best of the best because they are absolutely fabulous. And we started out with 6 people 15 years ago, and now we have 24 or 25.
Gosh, amazing. Well, you've done remarkable work out there spearheading these psychic fairs in Tucson, and I know you're the only game in town, so that's where to go if you'd like to have a really good reading and the pick of the best. That's where they are. So this is terrific that you're doing this ongoing. Now, we also have, as you know, a new advertiser. It is Pat Realty, and she's got this adorable property for sale. Take a look at it. It's on the website. It's been in a family's generation for 5 generations. I mean, family 4 or 5 generations, I should say. And yeah, isn't it? It's so interesting. It's a general store, fully stocked, with a couple of other buildings, and everything's in it. Everything you need, just a turnkey operation. Take a look at it. If you know anybody who wants to own a slice of New England history, then tell them to look at the website and give Pat at Pat Realty a call. Very interesting property.
Part of Americana.
It is.
Definitely.
It really is a part of Americana. You're so right. So tell us, what is going on here with numbers? We've moved into a whole different month, different energy cycle.
And this month is all about details of work, and if you're really lucky, more work.
We get paid for this work? I hope so.
No, not necessarily.
Oh.
But it is strictly about details of things, and really, if you physically get into things, you're going to feel 110% better. If you don't go for it and just let things slide, you're going to end up feeling like you're in the middle of a maze. But as you do physical labor, the body will start to feel better. But practice deep breathing and shake your arms out periodically like you've got a thermometer in each hand. It'll help release some of the tension, because all month long you're going to feel a lot of tension in the neck, in the back of the shoulders. So gently move that around and kind of, be kind to yourself a little bit, and then go back and dig another ditch, because I'll tell you what, it's the only way you're going to feel good this month.
No kidding. So work. Last month was all creative energy. It was kind of a happy place, and now it's time to be nose to the grindstone.
That's right. That is exactly it. If we work hard this month, I bet you can't imagine what we're going to get next month. Ooh, it's good.
Oh, God, don't scare me.
But you got to get through this one first.
Oh, boy, here we go. Well, and it's interesting because we're talking about numbers and how there's a certain vibration that affects every day. And also what we're going to be talking about with our guest tonight is also timing and dates, and how all of these are important. They have significance and can actually open portals for us. So we got to find out how to do this. I'm ready to open a few portals.
Oh, I would love to do a few.
Yeah, we can just take a peek inside, see if we like it there better. I don't know. So.
Well, it's one of those take me away Calgon moments.
It could be.
Right.
Or it could be I'm going to shut the door and stay right here. Thank you very much. So.
Okay.
We'll have to see.
I like my side better.
Yeah, I do too. To take me Calgon. Oh, see, we are going back in time.
I told you this is deja vu. What we have thoroughly enjoyed at another point in time, we're going to get to revisit tonight and be told how things come about. Good idea.
I'm just so excited to hear this information, and I hope it's something we can all apply and take that next step. It's time, I think, for people to raise their consciousness. So this is an appropriate guest who's very learned and has done a tremendous amount of research. So I'm going to bring him on the air. Let's see.
That he has.
He's calling in from Guatemala, and this is Carlton Brown. He was raised in the UK. He's born in the UK, raised in New Zealand. He's had a very interesting, eclectic, and adventurous life. He's a veterinarian, a biotech entrepreneur, vaccine innovator, hobby archaeologist, researcher, and author of this really fascinating book, Sun God's Sacred Secrets is the name of the book. It's available on Kindle, and his lifetime fascination with pyramid archaeology and cultures brought him to this place of wanting to do more research and write about it. Now, he lives and he's calling from Guatemala. So, let's see. Carlton, welcome to Supernatural Girls Radio.
Good evening, and thank you both very much for welcoming me to the show. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you, but we're going to ask you to speak up so we can hear you loud and clear.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, speak up as loud as you can, because I know you're in Guatemala on a cell phone. So we're going to work with this technology as best we can, because we want to really be able to hear what you have to say.
Okay, I'll make a point of talking loudly. How's that?
That's better. Thank you. Thank you. So you've had this fascination with archaeology, ancient cultures, and I know Patricia and I share your fascination. She and I have looked at the same stuff you've looked at, but we were unable to come to any conclusions about what it really means. But you've actually been able to determine what some of this means and how, in fact, to use it to bring enlightenment. So tell us a little bit about what sparked your interest in this. What was it?
Yeah. Sure. I've had an interest ever since I was a little boy, before I was 10 years of age. And I guess I had an unusual indoctrination into life with my father, particularly, focused on Giza, Teotihuacan, Nazca Lines, those sorts of things. And,
was your father interested in this kind of thing?
Oh, very much, yes. He had a very special interest in electromagnetism and alternative propulsion. He was a private researcher himself, a marine engineer who was involved in the design of turbines for power stations, warships and hydroelectric dams and those sorts of things. And to cut the story short, he got himself into a little bit of trouble, with the British government, and we ended up having to leave the UK, and we emigrated to New Zealand.
What did he do? Did he got himself? I'm sorry, again, I'm having a hard time hearing you. You have to talk really loud. What did he do that got himself into trouble?
He tried to give his research, information to the British government, and they didn't want to know about it. So he ended up providing it to the Russians, and he was operating from a premise that this was an important ideas, and he wanted someone to listen to him. And of course, that got him into trouble with MI5, and he lost his job. And effectively couldn't get another job in the UK, so we emigrated to New Zealand. And I was 6 years of age at that stage, and that created a how do we call it a particular path that ultimately sparked my interest in this. And then what happened as I grew older in life, I came to a point of divorce in 1993, and literally one of the first things I did was hop on an airplane and I went to Egypt. And I just had a fascination for these pyramids, and it was more instinctive as opposed to anything deliberate. And you just go to these places, you touch, you feel them, and it's a bit like, for me, it's a bit like going to church. And it was in 2008, just after I got my biotechnology company funded with venture capitalists in London. I kind of had a growing confidence and curiosity, and the ability to ask questions and answer them with science. And I was on holiday in Egypt, and went diving with some friends, and I took a book with me called Path of the Poles. And this was a book written by Professor Charles Hapgood, endorsed by Albert Einstein. And it was really looking at global catastrophe mechanisms as a means of driving evolution for all life on the planet. And a question arose out of that with me was were these pyramids built before this supposed catastrophe 12,000 BC when the ice caps melted, or were they built afterwards? And I went home to the UK, and I thought one night, well, let's have a look at this. Let's start and have a look at these pyramids. And ultimately, I bought a massive wall map, and I started to pinpoint where all of the pyramids were in the world. And then I got into Google Earth.
You started to put these things together. But let me ask you, when you went to Egypt and you were intrigued with these pyramids, did you get to stay inside the Great Pyramid at night or do any of those things that we all wish we could do?
Yeah, look, I've been back to Egypt quite a number of times, and I've spent hours meditating inside. I've tried the guards to let me into places, humans don't go. So I've been above the King's Chamber. and had a look at the multi-level, stacking of the granites. I've been into, along the passageway into the Queen's Chamber. I've been into chambers under the Giza Plateau as well.
When you meditated in the pyramid, did you notice a big difference?
Yeah, the thing you notice in the King's Pyramid is resonation. So, you've got tourists coming in and they're making noise, but this pyramid, it's acting as a waveguide. It's filtering sound of certain frequencies and wavelengths. And those are the things that are getting into the King's Chamber. And you can feel the resonance in the granite. This King's Chamber sitting on a corrugated floor. It's isolated from all walls, and it vibrates. It oscillates. It's it's made of 55% of the red granite is quartz. It's a piezoelectric material.
Oh,
and
right.
I've got other views outside of this book. To me, Giza was a machine. And, there's some interesting interrelationships with pyramids in China, Xi'an in particular, and in Teotihuacan. And,
now, some people have said that when they were in the pyramid, they were lucky enough to bribe somebody to stay in overnight, and they actually heard sounds coming from somewhere else, like chanting, and also they saw entities floating through. Did you have any of those experiences in the pyramids?
No. I got to an incredibly deep level of meditation with visuals, which is not something that normally happens, but no to that question.
So this kind of sparks you to go further. So you get all of the research and together when you return, and you return back to the UK, you said? I
did, yeah. So this project became my nighttime job. It was my project, my hobby. And,
wow.
I was working as CEO by day and coming home, racing home at night time to do this project because, to be honest, it's one of the most exciting things I ever did in my life.
That sounds fabulous.
Yeah, I mean, because it's something that, again, we've been fascinated by for a long, long time. I mean, it's these enormous structures. Obviously, were never meant to be tombs, but some people say it's a symbol for the brain, the human brain. Do you feel that's true?
No, look, I mean, as I say, this is not the subject of my book, and I hived it out for another book, but I'm happy to talk about it if that's what you want. But, for me, the thing that I do, my method of research is, number one, I try to get to the highest level possible. And I try to work backwards from things. And so, when I was looking at Giza, what I did is I noticed its interrelationships with other pyramid sites. So, the first is if you look at Teotihuacan, the Pyramid of the Sun, you look at Giza, the King's Pyramid, and then you look at one of the pyramids in Xi'an in China, they all have a base measurement which is within 1% of each other. And they sit on a straight line when you do that on a flat map, and that line is half the circumference of the Earth long, to within 0.4%. And then these pyramids have ratios in terms of, Giza is 2 pi times the height equals the perimeter of the base, Teotihuacan is 4, and in Xi'an in China, I've got provisional data that says that's 6. And then, when you look at the ratios of distances between them, these are, a sine wave metric of average to peak. And, when you put all of this together, it says that these are interrelated. And that level of interrelation is happening on many levels. And, for me, this was part of a global engineering project. And I think, if we then look to some of the work that Chris Dunn did, I really like, his mind and the way he was thinking that, the Giza Pyramid was a machine. I think it was a piezoelectric lightning generator. And the consequence of generating lightning is Schumann resonances. And the thing we've got to know, and this is what I found out in Sun God Sacred Secrets, is our ancestors were harnessing Schumann resonances on the solstices. And they were using that to supplement a meditation process to help.
So what does it do? So you're doing this transformative meditation ritual on the solstice. And what's the difference? Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if we can, just come back to, a basic, so we're all on the same sheet of paper, is human beings have been gifted 4 states of consciousness. We know about being awake, asleep, and when we dream. But we were given another state of consciousness, we can call that altered states of consciousness. And this is where we experience our higher states of consciousness. And so what our ancestors figured out was meditation was an incredibly important process. It's a gateway process to our higher states. But what they also realized is that the meditation process could be augmented or supplemented. And so sacred rituals are nothing more than assisting or supplementing the meditation process, because that meditation is driving key processes in the brain. And so, the idea of doing meditation on the winter solstice sunrise or the summer solstice sunset is it's enhancing your alpha brainwaves, particularly over the forehead region. So it's increasing the voltages. And when we change our state of consciousness, what we're doing is we're reaching certain voltage thresholds. We're reaching certain neurochemical or brain chemical thresholds. And when this happens, and it's coordinated, we move from being awake into altered states. It's a bit like, we go to sleep at night time and then we change our state of consciousness and we move into dreaming. That's what's going on in terms of, how the brain functions. So solstices are important because they are promoting enhanced alpha brainwaves.
Okay, so I understand that, and Patricia, I know you do too. We both meditate, and we both understand the power of that. And but making that next transition, that next transformation, that is key for our freedom. That's something that has been hidden for a very, very long time, right? I mean, that's part of the reason for all this symbolism, and again, you speak very intelligently about all the ratios, the distances. Most people would never get that far with understanding the relationship here that you've spelled out in your book. But again, it's rather complex. They clearly knew what they were doing. But what does it mean for us? I mean, can we use these pieces of information, bring them together in our own lives to enhance and transform our own consciousness?
We absolutely can, and if you think this book was published last year, but the bulk of the work was, for me, was done in, by 2012. So what I've been since December 2012 is a test pilot of ritual meditation. So the process that I've derived from this know-how, I call this ritual meditation. And I have used this quite a number of times, and anywhere between 2 and 3 out of 4 times I use it, I transcend. And what do I mean by that? Is effectively I dissolve this reality, and I experience a whole array of phenomena. So the key is everyone has this God-gifted biology. We just need to understand how to access it. And what religion has done, and particularly the priesthoods, is they've been incredibly adept at developing dependent relationships. So they were in partnership with leaders in the elite, and they collectively used, religion to harness people, to bring them together, to bind them, and then tax them. And we built a world on top of that. And, ultimately we end up in the 21st century today. We're a little bit divorced from religion. But once upon a time, you think about this. We all, we use information systems, computers and things for recording data and information. Once upon a time, we used to write it down. Well, in the ancient world, before they had writing systems, they used art, and they used the verbal discussion which embraced their mythology and their cosmology. And they were able to use the art as a focus and effectively embed this ritual information in symbolic form. And as they were talking to you, they were unveiling it. So unless you know what you're looking for, it's just a nice piece of art.
Exactly.
And what
didn't they also? Again, the ancients knew all of these secrets, but there were levels like the priesthood that kept all of this for themselves. And so the general populace didn't really have access to this then either, right?
Exactly. So, what I've done here, if we follow the project, the first was the alignments. And the alignments, the essence of that is they tell time. They tell sacred time. That was the time, the equinoxes and the solstices, when they conducted their most important sacred rituals. And then, the key things that fell out of that was there was a symbolism. So, if we look at, Earth hurtling around the sun over the course of the year, and we're moving from one solstice to the other, if we look at the difference in angle of orientation of the north-south axis of Earth, from the winter to the summer solstice, it carves out an angle of 47 degrees. And so what you find in every one of these religions, this is ancient Egypt, ancient India, the pre-Columbian Mesoamerica or Central America and South America is they used 47 degrees to delineate outlines, proportions, and shapes in terms of the deities, the sun gods and the sun goddesses, or parts of them. They used the serpent to depict the equinox. So you always see the V47 together with the serpent. And I could give you an example, for instance, the pharaohs.
But what's this? I have questions here coming from the chat room. What is the significance of this 47 degrees? What does it mean?
It's sacred time. So if you imagine that it means heads under the influence of sacred time. So in other words, they are doing these rituals where the sun gods appear on the winter solstice sunrise, the summer solstice sunset. That's what the 47 means. And when the serpent is the equinox, that means they're conducting their rituals on the equinoxes. So that's sacred time. And what you see is it's always the sacred time symbol in conjunction with the hallucinogen or the entheogen symbol, which is the provider of the neurochemicals. So what you've got is those three things: sun god, sun goddess, V47 and serpent is sacred time, and the neurochemicals being provided by the hallucinogens. So that's one level of the fingerprint. The other level is these alignments, which are effectively 80% of the alignments are accounted for by the equinoxes and the solstices. And then when you look at these sites, they all provide places of sensory silence. It's either a tunnel under the pyramid, it's either a chamber in the pyramid, or it's an inner temple sanctum in terms of the temples. And then, you've only got to look through the art databases or go to the museum and you see people meditating. So by the time you piece all of this together, you've got meditation in sensory silence conducted at sacred time, winter solstice sunrise, summer solstice sunset, the equinoxes, in conjunction with the use of hallucinogens. And there is evidence in Egypt and in Central America of geomancy. So they were aligning their body with magnetic north or south. And that's the process that I've deduced, and I call that ritual meditation. And for me, it works, and it's just the most mind-blowing experiences I've ever had.
Well, we want that.
Indeed. I mean, look, I could talk forever about this, but I think what we've got to be careful with, and if we just give this some context of what happened in the 1960s with the psychedelic era, that experiment that went on. It was based on the retrieval of hallucinogens from Mexico by Gordon Wasson. Ultimately, Albert Hoffman manufactured LSD, and we were playing as a society with just part of the process, but it wasn't sacred. And it wasn't respecting the fact that meditation was the core part of the ritual. And so it means we missed the sacredness and we missed the ritual. And, it's only now that science is showing us that what meditation does to the brain is exactly where these hallucinogens are working as well.
Well, I agree. I think what happened back in the 60s and 70s was basically a lot about recreation, but nothing about the sacred use of any of these herbs and medicines that the ancients used and the Native Americans and in other indigenous tribes used. So there was a complete disregard for that, and certainly nobody's encouraging anybody to use those types of substances without respect.
They were using those basically to escape. It wasn't to do anything about learning a higher knowledge of self.
That's right. Yes, that's true.
And boy, did they escape.
What's important here, and it's something I've done from the outset, and I really do shun, people who approach me just sort of, without that sacred intent, A, for their own spiritual development, or, profound psychological healing. If it's not in those two categories, I don't want to know, and I don't really want to help people. But, for me, this involves, I go through a very rigid preparation process that involves me fasting for 3 days. It involves me basically turning my computer off, my connection to the outside world, and being in nature. And I'm praying, I'm casting my intention for the trip, and I'm never asking, please give me ego, death, rebirth, or chakra and kundalini activation or whatever. I'm talking in terms of healing, and such that when I come out of this, there's more loving kindness and compassion and acceptance and forgiveness and non-judging and equanimity and tranquility and all of those lovely spiritual qualities. And, when I do it, and I hold ceremonial fires, I make offerings, and I'm talking to our ancestors, I'm talking to the spirit world, I'm talking to the elements, I'm and all of that subsumed under, the concept of universal consciousness or God. And it becomes an incredibly that in itself, before the ritual, is incredibly sacred, and you connect, and, you feel your love for God and, for the world around you, Mother Nature and everything else. And when you put yourself in that great state of mind, and then you get up at 4 o'clock in the morning or whatever on the winter solstice sunrise, and you consume your magic mushrooms or your San Pedro cactus, and, you then go off to do your meditation. These trips, as I say, between 2 and 3 out of 4 times, and a lot of that for me in Guatemala relates to the quality of the hallucinogens. I transcend, and I can give you an example of the trip that I had on the winter solstice last year. Without doubt, this was the most profound experience I ever had, and my reality dissolved away. I was Buddha. I watched all of this dark matter just dissipate from my body. My heart chakra opened, and I'm just bathed in this, what I would call, bliss, love, awareness. And I moved into the awareness of, what I call the metacosmic void. It was just black nothingness, the entirety of the universe before it was born. And then before my eyes, exploded the birth of the universe. And
now, you talk about the void, which I think is a really important thing for people to hear about, because a lot of people think when you go through a transcendence experience like this, it's all about the light, but point of origin, it's all about the dark energy.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I've not had the most perfect of lives. I've caused a lot of suffering, for myself and for other people, and it's got me into a lot of trouble. And I reached a point in my life of I split up with my girlfriend just before the solstice last year, and I realized, I need to, and I want to stop the suffering for myself and for other people. And, I think, number one, watching this dark matter dissipate off my body, and I was there for an eternity, outside of time. This was an eternity. And, and then, the scene changed to the birth of the universe. And I think you're right. We've gone from nothingness and blackness to, light and watching the universe expand and grow and develop and, become aware of the meaning of life. I was gifted awareness about what's our mission in life as individuals and what's our species level mission.
Carlton, there's a lot of questions coming in from the chat room. So let me see if I can just step in here for a second and ask you at least some of them. Somebody wants to know, how long do you have to be a meditator, like a number of years, to be able to access these higher states of consciousness and this type of transformation?
I think it's like anything in life. It's not a function of time. It's a function of your intention and your commitment. And in my case, it was 3 months. But I learned to meditate very quickly. And I think, for me, it's an eyes-closed meditation technique. The closest I would say is looking at Maharishi Maresh's transcendental meditation. He's very good at explaining that. I've also got a very step-by-step, explanation of that on one of my blogs. You can read that. But 3 months, eyes closed, it's just quieting the mind, being aware of things, and, this thing happens. If you were listening to Terence McKenna, and you ask him how he does it, he says he puts a set of blinds and he goes, over his eyes and he goes into a dark room, and effectively that's his type of meditation. This doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be sitting in fancy postures. A nice, comfortable chair is all I use.
And the whole key is to quiet the mind so it's not running around making you crazy, and so that you can perceive other things. I know for Americans it's very tough to sit quietly, but at the same time, you can do a walking meditation, you can walk a labyrinth, which does help to quiet the mind and synchronize energy. And there's other ways, I think, around that issue that Americans tend to have. And here's another question for you from the chat room. Now, I know you wrote a lot in your book about using plants and some of the things that you discovered that you feel were symbolic of the use of hallucinogens in ancient cultures. But it sounds like you found some that you liked and that worked well for you. Would you mind sharing about that?
Yeah, for sure. For me, without a doubt, magic mushrooms, the psilocybin cubensis, are, they have yielded the most success. And I'm now sort of experimenting with San Pedro cactus. But it's been years since I've had a full-blown experience with San Pedro. So, but definitely magic mushrooms, and you can buy the grow kits online, and you can grow these things yourself, and you then have control. You're not buying street pharmaceuticals like LSD. I mean, LSD works, but I much prefer magic mushrooms. I much prefer the nature-based materials.
Mm-hmm. So, again, we need to caution everybody that this is something that may not be legal where you live. I mean, our show is international. Every country and every state, actually, in the United States has its own laws around this. So you have to check to make sure that this is something that you can get legally if it's something you want to try. But now, is this something where you would recommend, if you're going to try this, that you have somebody with you who's not trying it? They can keep an eye on you, make sure you don't do anything crazy.
Yeah, look, just before I answer that question, I mean, I'm in the process of writing a second book, which is to effectively take this ritual process and say, how do we turn it now into a life process for transformation? And so, I think there's a number of things. If I hear of people say, for instance, they go to the Amazon and they go for these, they scare the hell out of me, that type of experience. So I think, doing something gentle first, and, we've all got baggage in our lives, and if we've never touched these things before in a ritual process, I would recommend actually doing low dose, and not even meditating, or meditating out in your garden or in nature, and just let the outer rings of the onion peel away. They let you focus on your anxieties. They let you focus on your relationships. Have you been good? Have you been bad? Who have you got disagreements with in your family? And they allow that stuff to come to the surface. And I think there's a real sense in doing low dose first. I think if you have, things like bipolar disorder or schizophrenia, this is a no-no. You really need to consult medical, advice. I think if you've got, mood disorders and you're on various pharmaceutical medications that are impacting the brain or the heart system, the cardiovascular system, you've got to be incredibly careful. So I need to, just like you've done, caution people. But if you're your average person, healthy, and life's been good, but you really you're interested in progressing your meditation, for example, your spiritual development, your yoga, or you realize you're suffering from death anxieties, you've got a terminal disease, you've got issues from your past childhood abuse, or you're dealing with addictions, then I'd start on the low dose, and you're keeping the full-blown ritual process for the equinoxes and the solstices, and so every year you develop your calendar, and yeah, I would be, if you've never done this before, do it with a spotter who's not doing hallucinogens, and someone who knows you well, someone that you have a good communication rapport with, so that you can talk about the stuff that comes up, because sometimes some scary stuff does come up. People are going to experience, symbolic ego death that, could be the appearance of a physical death of your body, and those are scary things to happen. So I think, you've hit on a really important point.
Well, this is a very powerful experience, and I think both you and Patricia have hit the nail on the head when you talk about this, that there has to be the intent that you're using it for your higher purpose. And Patricia, I just love what you said before. It's in the past, in the 60s and 70s, especially here in the United States, the drugs were used as an escape, and this is not to be used that way. This is to be used to really find out and clear information about yourself and have a deeper understanding. So it's not about running away. It's really about going deeper within your own consciousness. Is that an accurate description?
Totally. I think, ultimately we can say, if you don't have healing to do, this is about your spiritual awakening and transformation. If you have healing to do, you just realize that your healing is your gateway to spiritual transformation.
Yeah.
So,
right.
I wouldn't consider anything else outside of that.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
That's right. I was going to ask, do you feel that it's important that a person get a physical or a medical checkup before they anticipate doing any of this.
Yeah, I do, and I just come back to my original point. My second book, what I'm doing is going to develop what I would call a best practice. So this is looking at what the physicians are now doing who are getting the regulatory and ethics approval for conducting the clinical studies using magic mushrooms or LSD in hospital settings, and I'm going through their clinical submissions to the regulatory authorities and looking at what they're doing for a best practice for safety. And I do think having a how do we call it, access to a psychiatrist, psychologist, if you're already in some form of counselling, disclose this. Get a good medical, because if you do have CNS disorders and you're on medication or heart medication, you need to be incredibly careful.
And some people think that they can get away with anything because it sounds like it'll take them to another realm. Do you find that with this process that there's any type of difference in your overall health and well-being for you when you've been in using this?
Yeah, absolutely. And where I live, we've got some very interesting characters who've been yogis for 40 years. And one of the things what a friend of mine, Lev, says is he can see the energy difference in me. And younger, you are rejuvenated. I've had injuries and pains that have just disappeared. If we look into Indian culture, they talk about soma, and they talk about the rejuvenating qualities of soma. Healing, not just spiritual healing, but bodily healing as well. We often find that our illnesses are psychosomatic. There's a mind component and there's a body component, and the body component is resulting from, the mind component. And so, what these are doing is really adjusting the mind, and they're removing the ego's influence over mind and therefore disease. You've only got to look at, Albert Hofmann. He lived to 104 years of age, and I heard that a lot of his friends lived to over 90. And they probably were, Albert Hofmann taking LSD, and they were doing this on a regular basis. So, and this is what they talk about in the ancient world, was these were used for healing, for rejuvenation.
This is fascinating.
It is.
Well, I'll tell you what we're going to do, Carlton. Hang on here, because we need to take a short break. But I see there's people calling in, and we've got questions in the chat room. People are very interested in what you have to say about this type of ritual meditation. So everybody stay tuned. We're going to take a very short commercial break. We'll be right back. And if you have a question for Carlton, please feel free to call in at 646-478-0828. Again, that number is 646-478-0828. Or you can write a question in the chat room and we'll ask it for you. And hang on, everybody. This is really an exciting show. We'll be right back.
Are you searching but not sure what for? Does happiness seem like it's always around the corner, or perhaps fleeting? Life can seem like you're winning on the outside, but on the inside, you might be running on empty. Well, it's high time to rendezvous with your soul. Imagine being able to let go of emotional baggage effortlessly and have less mind chatter, freeing you up to be present to your beautiful, magnificent self. Wouldn't that be nice? More silence and the ability to hear your own true voice within. To be where life is, and joy and love is your natural state. This is all possible with Cosmic Fusion's 5D++ Awakening and Transformation Workshop, which will bring the quantum vortex, scalar wave, photon pulse in your life. The all-knowing, all-powerful, and ever-present mother of all frequencies and vibrations. This energy signature, direct from Source, is then available 24/7 to upgrade your potential to infinity and support you through exciting and profound shifts. This is something that cannot be explained. It simply must be experienced. But don't take our word for it. Visit our website for some life-transforming video and written testimonials shared right from the heart. So don't wait and visit CosmicFusion.com. That's KOSMICFUSION.com. www.CosmicFusion.com to find out more. Your soul is awaiting your transformation.
Bonjour, this is Veronique Raskin, founder of the Organic Wine Company. As one of the pioneers of the organic wine movement, since 1980 I have brought you the very best and most authentic organic wines directly to your table. I work with small family estates who grow certified organic grapes and produce exceptional wines. You can purchase our wines individually from our website at theorganicwinecompany.com or join one of our wine clubs. Our organic wines are perfect for you and for your family as gifts for friends and relatives, and they are simply spectacular for the holidays. Visit us at theorganicwinecompany.com to enjoy the very best organic wines conveniently delivered to your door. I am Veronique Raskin, passionate about my mission. I offer to you vegan, organic, and biodynamic wines, wines made by people of the heart, wines with a heart. Au revoir. Call us at 1-888-ECO-WINE.
Your property tax bill. Have you seen it lately? It's frightening. Your property taxes are going up while your home value is going down. It's time to fight back and win. For the real truth about the property tax system, get attorney Pat Quintilian's book, Are You Getting Screwed on Your Property Taxes? How to Find Out and How to Fix It. Attorney Quintilian answers all your questions and gives you the facts you need to fight a property tax bill that is spiraling out of control. You'll also read about what happens to property owners who don't check their property records, only to find out too late they're taxed on square footage, fixtures, and even buildings that they don't own. Is this happening to you? Learn your rights. Buy Attorney Pat Quintilian's book today. Are You Getting Screwed on Your Property Taxes? How to Find Out and How to Fix It. Available on Amazon.com.
Welcome back, everyone, to another exciting Supernatural Girls radio show. Again, I'm your host, Patricia Baker, here with my co-host, numerologist Patricia Kirkman. And our guest this evening is Carlton Brown, who is the author of a book, Sun God, Sacred Secrets, and it's available on Kindle, so you can download it right into your iPad or whatever electronic device you have. And this is a fascinating subject. Again, I'm so interested, Carlton, in everything you have to say that could help our audience to reach the next level in transformation. Now, one question that I have, one of the things that I have thought about a lot is Carlos Castaneda's work. And with his work and how he describes actually learning from Don Juan Matus is that he had to use certain types of hallucinogenics because he was really stuck in this reality. And so Don Juan Matus said, you're one of the people that needs these hallucinogenics because I can't unstick you any other way. But some people, he alluded to, don't need this kind of boost. So can you tell us about that? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think what we've got to do is to realize that there are people who spontaneously access the states, and then there are different levels with an altered state. Some people are clairvoyant, and some people can see the past, can see your spirit's or soul, and you then have energy healers and those things. So I think there's a whole spread or gamut of variety of people who have different skills in accessing these states of consciousness, and then you have these yogis or these mystic adepts who've been at it for decades. They isolate themselves, withdraw from society. And they're, how do we call it, living the spiritual way of life. And, they are able to, with this dedication and practice, access these states of consciousness without the use of the ritual processes that I'm talking about. But what I found quite interesting was when you look at ancient societies, kings and queens had a responsibility on behalf of society in order to control them and tax them. They had to have this job of going into the spirit world, and they underwent kingship and queenship development, and these were busy people leading busy lives, running empires and waging wars, and so they weren't afforded that opportunity to live that adept lifestyle. So, priesthoods ultimately, took shamanic processes and developed them into formal ritual processes that would guarantee with a high level of efficacy, that people could transcend. So, I think you've got people, Eckhart Tolle would be one of those people who spontaneously transcended and was a permanent transcender, for quite some period of time.
Yes, that's true. And he had that horrible dark night of the soul that people have reported, that you just feel like I'm at the end, and the only thing I can do is give up. And when they do that, when they, I guess what you call it, is a complete 100% surrender, because he thought he was just going to die, and he didn't. He ascended in some ways.
What I'm doing here is, if we look at some of the motivations as I was doing this archaeology project, I remember listening to a tape that a friend gave me by Jiddu Krishnamurti, and he was a famous Indian philosopher in the earlier part, first part of the 20th century, and he asked the question in the transformation of we would say, transformation of human species to awaken, spiritually transform. And, as I was doing this project, number one, that question was just indelibly impressed in my mind incessantly. And the answer came to me, we've got to give humanity its sacred ritual process.
So that is the key.
And only used by the elites. And today, I think we have an opportunity. We've got an emerging consciousness in humans. We've got the global internet that's putting people in touch with each other, and we're sharing cultures and knowledge and know-how. But we need a catalyst. And for me, that catalyst is giving people a ritual process with which they could access their natural biology and access these higher states of consciousness.
And in your book, you talk about how all different ancient cultures use different types of hallucinogenics. Now, do you think that some are meant for people on certain continents and certain countries, and some are meant for others? Like we have the Native American tradition here, peyote and things like that. Would that be more for Americans, and then other? You know what I'm getting at here? That there's some type of cultural.
No, I think the key thing is, what happens. These ancient societies, is they made do with what they had. And if hallucinogen categories, you've got those that are promoting, dopamine. So these are the sacred pink lotus, the blue and white water lily. They contain, possibly up to a fifth of the extracted mass. Ultimately, after some, metabolic tinkering in the body, they contain a dopamine agonist, what we would treat Parkinson's disease today. So you give the stuff in high enough dosages, and you look at FDA drug labels, the most frequent side effect is hallucinations. And then you've got other cultures, such as, pretty well much all cultures around the world had magic mushrooms. In South America, they've had, bilberry or Anandamethina columbrina. These are seeds, from a particular tree, and make dimethyltryptamine. And, what you find is the majority of these hallucinogens are promoting two pathways in the body. One is the dopamine, and the other is the 5-hydroxytryptamine serotonin 2A. And these are, we're talking about in high concentrations in the frontal brain. and it's the frontal brain that's driving the meditation process, and meditation's driving higher levels of dopamine and 5-hydroxytryptamine 2A. So, what they're doing is they're either taking one or they're taking combinations of both of those and getting themselves up to certain levels. So I think it's what's available in the natural habitat is determining what the priesthoods do.
Well, that makes sense. And then I have another question for you here in the chat room. They want to know, have you ever had a Kundalini experience during these meditations?
Yes, but not without the the whole ritual process. So this happened for me the spring equinox last year. I took magic mushrooms, and I was in my chair facing magnetic south, eyes closed meditation. It was a morning meditation, and it was really interesting because I'm in meditation. I've dissolved my reality. My heart chakra's partly opened up. And then something inside me said, let go, relax. And I actually peed myself. And it was during the peeing myself that just exploded. This warm glow just filled my entire lower body. And then other chakras opened up. I remember it said, put your head back. And I put my head back, and the throat chakra opened up as well. So I had an activation of a number of my chakras, but yeah, that was a pretty amazing experience.
Gosh, that sounds so powerful. Oh my goodness. Very exciting. Well, we have a caller on the line who wants to share a meditation experience he had. So we're going to welcome Yakashima from North Carolina to the show. Yakashima, do you have a comment or question for Carlton tonight?
Yes, ma'am. I have a comment that I wanted to make, and I just wanted to start off by saying hello to everyone.
Hello.
Hello there.
I just want to say, first of all, I just want to take the time to appreciate the beautiful, intelligent mind that you have, my brother, and the wisdom that has been bestowed in it. I want to continue to keep asking the Most High and the Divine to continue to keep blessing it and continue to keep allowing it to increase and grow and allow you to be a part of that when it happens. And I want to share a revelation that I received on the part of meditating. And what I wanted to speak about is that I was in meditation one day, and came to me in the form of the logos. And in it, I was able to hear the I am revelation. That I call it that, but it I don't know. I know for a fact that I myself have not the mind to have this type of wisdom and knowledge, so I can't give credit to me, but I also can give it credit to any man because it was something that came through me, and I wanted to share it with all of us because I love us. And to those who choose not to delve into the hallucinating process or ritual, I can tell you something that helped me, and it is called the I am. The I am is the mystery and the secret that goes all the way back to ancient time. And what it was able to show me was that it is the first thing that we all as civilization, all as human beings, the first thing that we say when we introduce ourselves to one another is, I am. And after that, you are being, or you are becoming, or you're being whatever you say you are. So he showed me something how to reset the mind, to reset the heart, to reset the nature, to reset the being, to reset the essence and the existence of one's creation by the simple use of the word I am. And it's not hard for anybody, and it's not difficult for anyone. But you have to have a want to be reset and a desire
Thank you
to be reset.
for that. That's a very interesting comment. And Carlton, I'm going to ask you to comment on that. And again, Yakashima, thank you for your call, but we're going to move along. And Carlton, do you want to make a comment about the I am?
Yeah, I do. I mean, it put a big smile on my face, and thank you very much for that. This I mentioned to you when I was having this experience of universal consciousness and watching, the universe, explode and implode before me. This was the awareness that I had given to me. I am. That is the mission of every single human being, is to witness that state of I am God. God is I. And at the individual level and at the species level. And it's, it is a creative and, very much intent, with love there, we can manifest everything in our lives. But moving beyond the cognitive at this side of, this earthly realm, it's to experience I am in altered states of consciousness. That's the mission we all need to achieve if we wish to transform ourselves.
So Yakashima was really onto something here. And again, Yakashima, thank you for your call tonight. So, this is a very powerful, powerful statement. And again, this is what people who are on the path of trying to find that inner truth, they're looking for this. Like, here's another question for you. Comes right out of the chat room. Will this ritual meditation help me unhook from the matrix? And we all know what that means, the mindset that everybody seems to agree to participate in. Will this help people unhook from the matrix is the question.
Yeah, look, I think it's part of the process. So, just having a single experience of altered states of consciousness without doing other things in your life probably is not going to take you anywhere other than you'll remember it as a great epiphany. But I think if it's part of a healing and spiritual development process, and you're meditating and you're unlearning and relearning, and I think you've got the ability to, open your eyes up and, see the real nature of mind, and you'll begin to understand the relevance of life. I can tell you paying 70% taxes and giving all of my intellectual capital to venture capitalists was not a smart thing. So, I didn't need this to wake up and realize it's a mug's game and I'm not going to, do that anymore. So that unplugs me from the system, and it brought me to Guatemala, and I have much more freedom in my life. So I think, but I think when you've had these experiences, your life is going to be changed forever. You will fundamentally change your outlook on life.
Why do you think, Carlton, that these things were secret, that these things were kept from the general population, this connection that's so powerful with God and the self? Why did they keep that hidden?
Yeah, great question. Look, I'm coming from I'm going to answer it from the cynic's perspective. This was about control and taxation. You think about, what the priesthoods did. If they accurately told time, it didn't just serve, the ritual purpose, but it also served agriculture. And if they got that right, they had good yields that created, taxes, and, with surpluses and taxes, governments could expand their territories and, build great empires. And the thing about that process is, of course, bigger empires meant bigger religions. So, I think the priesthoods have actually been very cunning. They've created these dependent relations. And, when I'm looking at the world today, and I've got to say I'm pretty disillusioned. With particularly with the monotheistic religions. And, I look at all and say, what is the efficacy of any of the rituals you're doing in terms of helping people access altered states of consciousness? And do you directly promote people? And I don't see this, I think, the Eastern traditions where their meditation and yoga base come the closest. But I think they long since forgot the addition of, sacred time and, the hallucinogens, the symbolisms there in their art, but it's not obvious in their process. So, either this information just got lost or it is in secret.
Okay, and here's another question on the same subject for you. Do you feel the Vatican is withholding these types of secrets?
Yeah, look, to be honest, how do we call it? Have I done research into any of these modern religions in any detail that I could answer that with any authority? The simple answer is no. I therefore probably, put myself into the same category as everyone else, that I have a speculative opinion. The ancient Church of Rome wiped out so many religions around the Mediterranean, ancient Egypt, Central and South America, and in Europe. So, it either destroyed this stuff or it took the essence of it and it hid it, back in the Vatican as a source of power. But I would then ask you the question, do you really see any evidence in any of the popes that we've ever had that they have accessed altered states of consciousness? Because I can tell you, if they had and they routinely accessed altered states of consciousness, we would see a different person in power.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, because when you've had these experiences, you are saying to everyone in the world, and you would transform the way you conduct your religion. And this is not an evidence in my mind. So I think this, I think there are parts of these religions, we'll call them the mystic branches. If you think about, Jesus, Buddha, Krishna, any of these ancient mystic founders, they then built a religion around them. But what they were doing in the very early days were, they were part of mystic healing traditions. And then, when these people died, sacred texts, anywhere from decades later in the case of Allah to hundreds of years later in the case of Jesus or Buddha, then sacred texts were written, and they were not in the words of, the mystics. And so, these mystic traditions are there, but you've got to go looking for them. But are you able to ever find any of their ritual processes in the public domain? I've never found them.
Right. So all this came out basically from your own research, which is very thorough, I must add. I mean, it's extremely thorough research that you did, and you talk about it as your second job. I can see what you mean. This is a huge undertaking that you...
I think it's his first job.
Yeah.
Well, it was really. It was a hedge policy on the certainty that I was going to lose my job as CEO of my biotech company. It's the way venture capitalists work, and it was, as I say, it was my hedge, and I effectively committed CEO suicide. And stepped down, and I came away and wrote this book. But I've been most passionate about this. It's just. Yeah, I've got to say, I went on a search. From childhood, I knew I was meant to do something, and I knew I needed to heal because I came from an incredibly abusive childhood, and it left a lot of scars. And those scars, ultimately they were the cause of my relationship demise with my last girlfriend, and I've had to, I received that relationship from her. She was the perfect mirror for me. And ultimately, I've had to, dig and go inside myself, and and begin that process of healing. So, yeah.
Well, it's interesting. I have a theory that those of us that have come from abusive childhoods, and I'm one myself, I think that there is a gift in that, and that gift is it doesn't bind us. So when you go through something like that, you don't feel bound to family. And you start turning to a different direction, which hopefully is a positive one, but in your case, more towards inner transformation, which is, again, it's a choice that you can make more easily, I find, when you've had an abusive childhood. People that...
I thank you.
I just want to make just one more comment, and then I want to hear what you have to say about this. But I think that's the secret gift of an abusive childhood. And when you don't have that, when you are really bound in ways that you don't even know with family, and it can create your own prison. Mm-hmm. So even though your relationships might be wonderful and loving and this and that, there also may be aspects of something else there that you don't recognize. But when you have an abusive childhood, you can walk away from those things that bind you normally in a family. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, totally. I mean, you said that very eloquently, and I think you're spot on the money. These are, we look at them, and this is about mindset, and, these are an incredible opportunity. They are your doorway to, spiritual development. And I was reading an article quite recently that talked about, in a lot of ways, the shaman is the wounded child. And what they, there are, various disciplines of science, sociology that look at, they've got interesting ways of looking at the human population. But this particular article talking about the dissociative capability. So, by that I mean, the ability to access these higher states of consciousness, altered states of consciousness, that it's well known that abused children have a greater tendency to, have these dissociative states. So, how do we call it? It's an adaptive mechanism to, because, our instinct was to survive as children and we had to do anything to survive.
Exactly, you did. Yes.
The attrition rate. So nature somehow inbuilt this into us, and I look back now, and instead of looking, in anger, I look in forgiveness and love and kindness, and I forgive my parents, and and I'm grateful in a lot of ways for the past that I had, and I realize that they themselves were victims of their abusive childhoods, and in the case of my mum, she lost her father at a young age, and her mother had to go into a mental institution for depression, and that had an impact on my parents, and they came together, and they knew no better in bringing us up, and the moving to New Zealand when my father lost his job, financial hardship, and just they were messed up. They took as kids, and I spent my whole life running. I would say I've had the typical Kiwi lifestyle of drinking and smoking marijuana and doing crazy things and being unaware of the suffering I've caused. And I've been married and divorced and in and out of relationships or just staying single. And I was scared. Scared of myself and fear of myself. That and brought up and at a time and an environment where people said once you're an adult you can't change. And, that's BS. You can change. And, this is one of the things that hallucinogen research teaches, is that actually you can change your personality, you can adapt.
Yeah, it seems the hallucinogens appear to create some new level of flexibility within the psyche that wasn't there before. And I find that very interesting. It's just like you said, you can recreate yourself, you can make changes, you can do whatever you need to do, because it takes you out of your little self and the way you're used to looking at things. So it can be a very powerful transformational experience. And again, I totally respect what you're saying, that this has to be done with ritual. It has to be done in the right way. It has to be done with the intent that you're going for your own personal transformation, transcendence, and healing. And it's powerful, and you don't want to take this lightly. And as Patricia said, this is not about escape. It's about responsibility, too. So this is taking hallucinogens to a whole other level. And it's, again, now with ritual meditation, you did mention some people don't need to do the hallucinogens. They can just follow their own inner meditation and their own journey, and they'll have a similar, or if not the experience that they're looking for. So that's good for people to know as well. It doesn't have to be with hallucinogens.
I think as well, if you look on my website, there's a meditation calendar there. So, basically it tells you times of sunrise and sunset, moonrise and moonset, the phase of the moon. And, it's, I think some people who are at a very advanced level of meditation, if they just tweaked the timing of their meditation, they may be able to transcend. Because, when I very experienced meditators, they're not thinking in this way.
Now, tell everybody, please, Carlton, what is your website address so people can visit you on your website?
.com, and that's CARL.
Yeah, you clicked out for a second, so please say it again.
47.com.
Patricia, did you hear that?
No, I couldn't hear either. Is it Carlton 47?
No, Carlton Brown.
Carlton Brown 47. Thank you, because your phone clicked out each time you said it.
Carlton Brown V47. So Carlton Brown V47.
Oh, P as in Victor. Great. Okay.
Because all I got was the 47.com and part of the C, so I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
Okay, and so that's
so
the website.
You've got access to my. Yeah, so you can click on the links to all the retail stores, also click on my Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn profiles, and you can access a pile of resources. You can look at every one of these sites and look at the sunrises and the alignments. You know, there's 450 pyramid and temples, so you can look at that in Google Earth. You know, there's something like 30 photos. There's the 2-minute book trailer. There's all there, basically.
Now, when's the next big power time coming up?
Summer solstice. So I think that's the 21st. It is Sunday, the 21st of June. And, you know, if we, you know, where you are, look at where the sunset is. And you're going to be looking sort of, you know, an hour and a half before sunset. This is when we get these peaks in Schumann resonances or these, you know, low frequency electromagnetic radiation. And, you know, that will be when I conduct my next ritual. Although I have to say I'm going on a healing retreat in just over a week's time, so I'm doing some ayahuasca then.
Now, what is do you have another goal with this for yourself personally? Is there something you're trying to achieve with your own ritual meditation at this time?
Yeah, look, you know, I think I'm doing the healing, you know, and my singular focus over the next year, 2 years is about healing. And then ultimately it's, you know, then taking me on a journey to see what other things are available to me. I would like the idea, my intent will be to identify or find a guide. Ultimately, I want to become a white shaman, you know, a shaman for the West. And help those people, you know, in our societies, you know, in other societies around the world who want to, you know, develop, you know, this sort of ritual and, you know, within their own lives. That's my job I'm a healer. I used to be a veterinary surgeon. I got into vaccine innovation and, you know, focused on pandemic flu. But ultimately, my destiny was to become a shaman and help people.
Exciting. How fabulous.
Yeah.
Now, do you also conduct groups? So people would come to Guatemala and do a ritual meditation group with you?
Yeah, not at the moment, but it's very much in discussion. I've got a good friend of mine who's, you know, he's basically cured of Tourette's. He's been 15 years and, you know, he's developed his own way. And, you know, we're talking about a fusion of the two approaches, looking at this to develop a sort of a life plan, not just the solstices and the equinoxes. And I would very much like to do this. And if there were people who are interested, you know, they can email me and we could, you know, how do we call it? Something will happen out of those discussions. And, you know, I will just let that organically happen. And, you know, if it's with the right intent and, you know, people have some, you know, experience there, you know, we can all learn from each other. And I think the key point to get across is I'm not sitting the other side of the canyon like Eckhart Tolle saying, I'm there, I'm here, this is what you've got to do. I'm a bridge builder. And I'm here to help people cross that bridge, get across that divide. And I'm starting that journey. I'm a couple of paces ahead of people. That's about it.
Nice. Now, here's another question for you from the chat room. When you do these ritual meditations and you've had these experiences, do you notice a spirit animal that has accompanied you?
Very interesting question. Not so. I mean, the answer is I've had Nawales this side. So, you know, in the earthly appearance, I've seen the black jaguar. I was going from Tikal to Wakshak-Tun, which is just north of Tikal, and a black jaguar walked across the road right in front, and it stared me right in the eyes. I've had a number of other rituals. Yeah, you know, this was pretty amazing. And you know, then literally 2 weeks later, I had my first transcendental experience just across the valley at an old Mayan ceremonial site. That was, you know, my first mind-blowing experience. I then had a ritual last year I told you about where the Kundalini activation happened. And a few days before the ritual, I had this big long snake slither out in front of me when I came back from Antigua. I went to El Mirador just recently, and again, I had 3 snakes run out in front of me. And in you know, my trip there, then I did in El Mirador in the jungle, you know, I saw the snake in my trip. And then within, you know, altered states of consciousness, I've been wrapped in the coils of a massive serpent that just held me there. And energy, and its head just sat there, you know, right in front of me and above me, and I knew I was being loved.
Now, what is the significance of the head of the snake on the headdress of the pharaoh? What does that mean?
Oh, sorry, the headdress of what, sorry?
The pharaoh. ancient Egypt
Yeah.
pharaohs had
So,
the.
yeah.
What does that mean?
So, I mean, a very, it's a very good question, and I mean, that's called, it depicts the goddess Wadjet, who was associated with both the equinox and the solstice, and it's part of, the principle of Nat, which was their, divine law and order and honesty and upholding the truth, and, that was the pharaoh's responsibility at the level of society. At the level of, from my point of view, I believe that the snake depicts the serpent. So what you've got is the memes, which is the headcloth, and, you've got this 47-degree angle, and you see this on pharaohs, through the first, the Old Kingdom and the New Kingdom. And the 47-degree memes is the solstice, the serpent was the equinox, that sacred time. You see a similar thing, at Uxmal, which is a pyramid site in just out of Merida in the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. On the front of the quadrangle, the Nunnery quadrangle, you've got these V47-degree angle Vs with their serpent deity, his head stuck in the middle. So, what it's saying is you've got the solstice extremes, and in between, 31 days later, you've got the equinox. And so for me, across these cultures, you saw the pairing of the V47 solstice, and the equinox was the serpent.
So you've had some pretty powerful snake experiences, the black jaguar experience, and so people are asking questions about it. Again, they love the animal the animal interventions with these experiences you've had. Now, the black jaguar, they're asking about. What do you feel the significance is of the black jaguar in your life?
Yeah, look, this is a great question, and this I don't know, but I think what we've got to realize in Guatemala is they had a priesthood, and this priesthood probably spanned something close to 2,000 years, and it was the priesthood of the jaguar. So the jaguar is, they were associated with the priesthood, as was the snake. I think there's a level of associated with healing. They say that the shamans today, they can, how do we call it, transform their shape from human into animal. And, the fact that appeared before me right before I began the process of using ritual meditation, I saw it as an oales, I saw it as a sign. Maybe it was associated with, a spirit manifestation in the animal, and it was there to recognize me. I've had some other experiences of when I went back out to Wakshak-Tun. I was going to use that as a journey to head through the jungle on motorbikes to get to El Mirador. And, there were a number of coincidences that day with, 47 appearing in telephone numbers that people were giving me, who were going to help guide me. And, once you start getting connected with this stuff, you start to look for signs. You start to read the signs that are happening, the gust of wind that blows up, the two big eagle crows that fly over your head, the snake that rides in front of you. You notice signs. And, for me, I think the jaguar, I'm living in a country, I believe I've lived in Guatemala before this life. I believe I've been part of these priesthoods, part of, these great complexes that we've built. I know for Egypt, I know I have Celtic roots from the northeast of England. So I have a sense that I have been something sometime before in a previous life.
What a wonderful feeling. And also I want to comment on what you just said a minute ago about looking for signs. I think it's a very important message that you've given to our audience and all of us tonight. It's about looking for signs, because our lives in the United States tend to be so packed full of minutia, of nonsense, of, okay, now we got to go to the store. Now we got to go pick up the dry cleaning. Now we got to do this. Now we're going to do that. And we forget that there are signs. We're just ignoring them. So there are signs everywhere, even in our mundane, everyday lives. But we have to open to seeing them. And I think for you, on the path that you're on, it's a lot easier. But it's there for all of us if we would just pay attention. And these are powerful signs. It's like when people say to me, well, I dreamt about A lion in my dream, but I saw a lion on television. That's probably why I dreamt about it. And then I have to say, but how many other things did you see during the day? You didn't dream about them. You dreamt about the lion. So clearly, there's significance. There's a message in there. And so I think what you've said, about paying attention to these signs, extremely important, and it's a very important part of everybody's healing.
Yeah. I'm reading a book at the moment about the secret of letting go. And he's, really sort of talking in there, we've got lives and, the consequences of those lives. We're filled with a lot of angst, a lot of stress. We're pushing the whole time. And there's always resistance. And, having those sort of, how do we call it, the rational plans and, they're around, sorting out our career, all of those things, everything's goal driven. And and sometimes that can be a struggle. And versus once you start, how do we call it? I'm fortunate. I don't live in a Western society. I live in one of the chakras on the face of the planet. I've got 4 volcano peaks sitting in front of me. I'm sitting in front of a lake that's over a mile deep that blew its head 82,000 years ago, and this is an incredibly rich area. And I feel I'm plugged into this most awesomely rich environment for creativity and spiritual awareness. And sometimes I think something or I ask for something, can these things happen? For example, my sink blocked up and I needed a plumber. So I went to chat with my friend and she mentioned, I've got this friend. She can do that. So, one thing and another, I meet this person who's a, transvestite, but she's had an incredible past, and, she's both male and female and he dresses as a she. And, there we go. I meet this person and we clicked and just straight into the most intimate of discussion. And this person turns out being able to read spirits, see your spirits and see your energy and, the ability to heal and has very, very special gifts. And, it was just by me being aware and being open and, listening to the rustle of the wind in the trees. And it said to me, just listen, be aware and listen. This person has something to say.
Well, you're certainly in a beautiful spot on the planet. I mean, you're on a stunning spot from what you've described, and certainly that draws to it very special people, and so you become the caretakers for all of this, and as you open and heal yourself, it's wonderful. I can't even imagine living in a foreign country. Can you, Patricia? But Guatemala sounds gorgeous.
Well, I would imagine it's absolutely fabulous, but, I get close to that little comfort zone of ours. We're afraid to leave it sometimes.
All the time.
Yeah, no, I feel you. And so many people are like that. And if you ever get the chance, Guatemala, it's very close to you guys. It's in the same time zone. It's not hard to get here. It's a beautiful country, and despite in the world from a tourist point of view,
you probably don't have any property taxes there, right?
not like you do in the US or the UK. No.
I'm going to book a flight.
Okay, then I'll go with you.
That's my plan. I mean, no property taxes. That's heaven on earth. My God. But it really is. It just sounds amazing, and it sounds like you've made again all these decisions that have brought you to Guatemala and to your path in becoming a shaman and working with other people and in their own personal healing. But what you said tonight, I mean, what really stood out, Carlton, was the thing about looking for signs. I mean, everybody in our audience, pay attention to this one. You really need to watch for those signs. It is so important in terms of if you want to raise your consciousness, you want to go to that next level, then pay attention to those things that show up in your life.
Well, it's your higher self communicating with you. So once you start looking at the signs, you realize rather than looking at the lower self or the rational ego-based mind, you're more in tune with yourself. And, this comes to the power of now. This is the thoughts of the future, the past, different geographies, be in the present. And when you're in the present, you become aware of your feelings, your thoughts, your things that are going on in your body, things that are going on in the environment. And that's part of mindfulness meditation. And once that starts to happen, you realize that you're being talked to. And that talking is happening externally. It's talking happening to you internally, and it's your internal manifesting the external. And, when you do that, you'll know you're on the right path.
And that's what we need to know. So again, everybody, feel free to visit Carlton at his website, which is carltonbrownv47.com. And also get his book. You can get it right on Kindle. It's Sun God, Sacred Secrets. It's got a tremendous amount of research on all the ancient cultures and how they all tie together, and along with the doorways, the best times and places for meditation. Is a wealth of information. And Carlton, thank you so much for calling us from Guatemala tonight, beautiful Guatemala tonight, with no property taxes. So,
look, it's been a real pleasure. I mean, you guys have been really great hosts, and it's so good to be talking to people who really know a lot about the subject and what you're talking about. So you've made my job really easy. And I just thank the people who are listening to this as well. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, and it's been a pleasure, really has, and very enlightening. And we both commend you on, again, your persistence in getting to the bottom of all of the symbolism. It's quite a book and quite a lot of research that went into it. So everybody, the name of the book again is Sun God, Sacred Secrets. And Carlton's website is carltonbrownv47. So thanks again, Carlton. And please come back with your next book. We'd like to talk to you again anytime.
Oh, definitely.
I will do that. I'd be very happy to do that. Just one thing. I'm within the next month, I will put out a new edition of this book. I've really refined it and focused the argument. Much simpler to read, so you can download this version now, but as long as you're aware that it'll be replaced with the newer version, and I think the newer version is a much better read. Please by all means download it.
Okay, we will look for that in a month. Well,
have a great evening, everyone.
You too. Thank you.
Have a delightful time in Guatemala.
Yes, we'll be thinking of that.
And if ever you're down here, let me know, okay?
We will. Absolutely. Thank you.
Cool. Been a real
pleasure. So everybody, we are going to say goodnight to all of you as well. And don't forget, if you'd like to tune in and hear about the Skull Experiment with Becky Andreasen and myself on Renee Barnett's show, Night Vision in L.A., then be sure to visit the website, supernaturalgirls.com. You can click on the link to Night Vision Radio. And at 10:30 tomorrow night, we will be live on the air after, of course, our naps. So,
and mine too, so I can listen.
Yes, and yours too. We're all going to be napping in the afternoon, so we can stay awake late tomorrow night and talk to everybody about what is happening with Beyond Skull. And also, don't forget, if you want a numerological reading, Patricia Kirkman is available at patriciakirkman.com. And follow us on Twitter and Facebook. We each have pages you can become a part of so that you can keep in touch with us and be aware of all the latest and greatest stuff that's coming your way. So I hope everybody has a nice, safe week, and we will see you on the Blue Highway. Good night, everybody.
Good night, my dear. Good night.
Good night, Patricia.
Thanks for listening. Tune in next week for another radio adventure with